Exodus 21 through 30. Exodus 12, 21 through 30. Then Moses called the elders of Israel and said to them, "Draw out and take you a lamb according to your families and kill the Passover." Now, at this time, the way the family system was set up was you had all these families, and then there was the oldest one was the leader of the family. So that's who Moses went to. Instead of going to every single individual, he just went to the one that was leading the family. Now, the reason the lamb is because many of the animals weren't considered clean for sacrifices. And lambs were oftentimes, goats are oftentimes isolated, but lambs often follow the person around. They often follow the shepherd. So there's more connected with the lamb, which shows that at one time we connected with their sin, but after we lay it to rest, we don't need to go back to it because it needs to be dead to us. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the two side posts with blood that is in the basin, and none of you shall go out at the door of the house until morning. Now, they put the blood on their doorpost. This over them. But we got the blood of Christ covering us. So the angel of death comes upon the houses and sees the blood. Well, when that happens for us, they'll see the blood and we'll go to life everlasting. For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he sees the blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not allow the destroyer to come into your house to smite you. And you shall observe this thing for an ordinance to you and to your sons forever. They observed it, but I don't think they kept observing it this way. I think they just did. They changed it up a bit. They always took a lamb for Passover, but I think later on they took the lamb and had it as a meal. Yeah, they roasted it. Yeah. So they didn't just spread the blood over the. I don't think they spread the blood anymore. Yeah. So sometimes we may change the things a little bit the way we do them, but as long as we remember why we're doing them, they may have changed the way they did Passover. Right here they were celebrating Passover in Egypt. Later they would celebrate it by the temple. So the things changed, but the reason why they were doing it was to serve God. And the way we do things may change, but as long as our motive is to serve God, everything's going to be good. Because He ain't going to lead us into serving Him in some way of wickedness, but in righteousness. And it shall come to pass when you become to the land which the Lord give you, according to He has promised, that you shall keep this service. And it shall come to pass when your children shall say to you, "What mean you by this service?" that you say, "It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt, when He smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses." And the people bowed their head and worship. People are going, as kids grow, and because if they're brought by the parents, they're going to ask and question about why they're brought to church. If the parents are going to church for the right reasons, they're going to have the right answer. it ain't going to be an answer just because this is what we do. It'll be because we come here to worship God. We take time out of our time, give it back to Him. The Israelites who experienced this would see the deaths of the firstborns in Egypt. They would know that because of their faith, God spared them. Today, we don't have to worry about the death of the firstborn, but hellfire we worry about. And if we come to Christ, we're spared from that. And we can share that we're spared by Christ with others so they can come to Him. The difference between what we got here and what the Israelites weren't told to tell the Egyptians, if you do this, you only spared the Israelites. And the children of Israel went away and did as the Lord had commanded. Moses and Aaron did so. And it came to pass that in midnight the Lord smote all the firstborns in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat upon the throne to the firstborn of the captives that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the cattle. So it wasn't just the people that died. The firstborn of all the animals died here too. But the significance of the firstborn at this time was the firstborn symbolized the new generation. It was the heir. It was the next. It was the one that was cherished because they were the one to take over everything. Now the firstborn of Pharaoh was viewed as a god. So for the firstborn of Pharaoh to be killed showed that God was more powerful than the Pharaoh line. That God and the Pharaoh had nothing on God. Pharaoh couldn't do nothing that God didn't allow him to do. It showed that God was more powerful than Pharaoh. And Pharaoh rose up in night, all his servants and the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. Because at this time, there would have been firstborn in every household. Most households may have had grandparents and parents and all in it at this time, because that's just the way they did things. So there may have been multiple firstborns die, because if your dad was the firstborn and you're his firstborn, well, both of y'all will die here. So we may think that it was one per household, but most likely the way they had things, it was maybe 3 per household. It may have been multiple per household that died because of this, because both of them being firstborn from a different generation. Okay. 1 Samuel 2:1. And Hannah prayed and said, my heart rejoices in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth is enlarged over my enemies, because I rejoice in thy salvation. Hannah had something to praise about. The Israelites had something to praise God about because they were passed over. We have something to praise God about because we're passed over. Because of Christ, we can enter into life.